Good afternoon to the massed hordes. It's 2 minutes past 4. Welcome to the executive decision-making meeting for the Cabinet Member for Housing, which is me. I'm Councillor Darren Sanders. I have to start by, before we begin, I have to start with a few housekeeping things for people here, and then after that I shall introduce everyone here. So, just for safety information, this is for colleagues who are here if you're watching this on the web. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble at Queen Victoria's statue in front of the civic offices. In order to comply with the Portsmouth Cultural Trust fire marshal regulations, these are the people who own the building we're in, which is the Guildhall here in Portsmouth. Anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should remember to sign out when leaving the building after today's meeting. Now, today's meeting is going to be slightly different to other meetings because of the nature of what is under discussion. So, may I draw everyone's attention to the fact that the open part of this meeting will be live streamed from a camera at a fixed location at the back of the meeting room, and the recording will be on the Council's website. Now, I'm also meant to say, even though there are no members of the press and public here, that they're also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please, can everyone remember to use the microphones provided when they are speaking? I'm meant to do introductions mainly for the benefit of people web streaming. I'm Darren, I'm the Cabinet Member for Housing. Luke?
Luke Stubbs, Conservative Group spokesman on housing.
Officer colleagues?
Wayne Layton, Finance Manager.
Alison Claren, Supported Housing Business Partner.
Jo Bennett, Head of Business Growth, Relationships and Support.
I'm James Hill, the Director of Housing, Neighbourhood and Building Services.
Joanne Wildsmith, Democratic Services.
Thank you, colleagues. I will talk through how I intend to run this meeting as we go along, but the first item on the agenda is so I'll try and do as much. The idea is to do as much of this as is physically possible to do in public, so that we're open and transparent. But there may be elements within this that may not be, and I'll come to that in a second. Apologies for absence, Joanne. Are there any?
I've heard just from the Residents' Consortium giving their apologies, as they were understood that it's a private matter that's being discussed and not a general housing matter.
Okay, that's fine. Does anybody have any... Luke, do you have any declarations of interest in the Squire? No? Okay, I have none either. So 3. The matter under discussion contains a lot of quite sensitive information that could identify specific individuals. I'm very keen to make sure that, although we want to be as open, as transparent as possible, that there are going to be questions particularly around issues around money and particularly issues around people whereby it may not be appropriate to do that in open session. So what I'm suggesting, the routine, if Luke in particular is okay with this, is to for James to introduce the paper, particularly the public part of the paper which is accessible, and then ask, I have a series of questions, some of which can really only be dealt with in an exempt format. Then I understand, Luke, that Wayne has got a financial appraisal spreadsheet, and then at that stage I am proposing that we go into an exempt session, because I appreciate you in particular haven't seen the financial spreadsheet, Luke, and it would be quite useful to have a look. Then we can ask some questions relating to exempt and confidential information in an exempt session. When those have been exhausted, there are a couple of questions I at least wanted to ask, which I've checked with Democratic Services that I can ask in public. Then we will resume that, and then Luke will offer up his own questions and thoughts, and then I will come to a conclusion and possibly do some summing up. Does that sound reasonable, Luke, in particular, yeah? Okay, James. Sorry, Joanne.
Can I just ask that you pass the exclusion of press and public relating to the appendices only, so that they remain outside of the public domain, although you can still have your discussion not relating to them in open?
Yeah. Yes, I'm happy to do that, and I don't think anybody's shouting about it, so not happening, so that's fine. So, James, please.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. So the report you have before you is unchanged, but just to introduce it, this is a report which focuses on an exceptional housing needs case, and The reason for the exempt items is because we didn't wish to discuss the circumstances of the family involved in an open session for understandable reasons. It's worth saying that the family isn't currently housed by the local authority in our own housing stock. They are, though, on our housing waiting list and have been for some time waiting for accommodation. So the report and the outcome of this would be that the housing service use land it currently owns, that it owns, to build a purpose-built property for the family. In doing so, we would purchase the current accommodation that the family is in. So for the housing service, we would end up with 2 properties in our stock, which are both then adapted for specific housing need, both servicing the need of the family in question and enabling us then to look to house someone else on the waiting list that requires adapted properties. Because they would be specifically adapted, it's worth noting that the properties would remain within the housing stock. They would avoid the right to buy because of the specific nature of the adaptations, and it is a housing need that we have, so it makes sense from the housing service point of view that we pursue this course of action. The borrowing which Wayne will talk to is using prudential borrowing. This isn't about using council tax funding. There was an article that appeared in relation to this report which suggested that this was about using council tax funding. That's not the case. This is a pursuit of prudential borrowing and then using the rent from the properties to pay that back. I thought that's worth just making clear. I can't really talk in much more detail because of the exempt nature, but clearly there's a financial appraisal in the background to this which supports the recommendation. And as I say, both properties would be classed as adapted properties, so they remain within the housing stock servicing ongoing need as adapted units of accommodation.
Okay, that's fine, James. So, for people watching, what we're now proposing, I've never done this before, so you're going to have to forgive me, Joanne. What I'm proposing we do is that we then close down the filming. The second bit of the public session will also be available for people who want to watch it on demand. We're not quite sure when we're going to be coming back, but we will be coming back. So, Joanne, is it a case that we now close down the live streaming? Yeah. So, thank you very much. We will be back shortly.